Good evening. This is the Kennebunkport Planning Board, January 8th, Planning Board meeting. If you want to join via electronic means, the information is on the Kennebunkport website. I'll welcome all of you here. Do we have any people out in Eland?
We have one Zoom attendee.
One Zoom attendee, okay.
Is that Galen?
Galen is here as well.
Oh, that's right.
Galen as well, okay, fine. Hello, come on in. Okay. It looks like we're going to have a full planning board. Everybody is here in attendance. And if that's the case, then I'll ask everybody if they've had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes.
Okay, any changes or corrections? Okay, in that case, I'll make a motion for approval of the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay. You approve?
Yes.
I approve?
Approve. Approve.
Approve.
Okay. Our two alternates will not be voting tonight because we have a full board. However, you're about to go into subdivision land there, which will keep your attention. Okay. Our first application is 241-101 Landonwood subdivision from the Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust. Larissa, are you going to be the agent on this one? Thank you. This is a preliminary subdivision application. Are there people here who are not here as part of the Heritage Housing Trust of the second subdivision we're looking at, just members of the audience? No? Okay. Then I won't explain how we do the procedure. Okay. Why don't you describe the subdivision for us in the preliminary plan?
Certainly. So hello, everyone. My name is Larissa Crockett, and I'm the Executive Director of, we are now doing business as the Neighborhood Housing Trust, but we are legally and formally applying as the Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2 for this particular application. So the project is on Beechwood Avenue, yet to be assigned a number. It is for a 3-building subdivision. Each of those buildings would be a duplex. One side of the duplex will be a 2-story, 3-bedroom, 1.5 plus one more half bath at 1,300 square feet, and one half of the duplex will be just about 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, single story. The designs are really intended to look like a classic New England farmhouse. We were really pleased to find a builder that understood what a Kennebunkport aesthetic meant and making sure to design a duplex that really fit into the architectural kind of feel of this community, and we're very pleased with the design. The plans that were submitted to you last week as kind of a redo, the original plans that we submitted had 3 separate lots with a duplex on each lot. The challenge that we learned of when we got back the memo from Galen's office was that Lot 2 was under the net residential area based on the infrastructure requirement that's not only applied to the entire parcel, but also each individual lot. So per Galen's suggestion, we have shifted it from being 3 lots to being condominiumized, if that can be a word, if we can use that as a word, and having the home simply be on one large lot, and that takes away a couple of the challenges that we were having with this project. One of them was that this is a former quarry site. There are some real, just kind of topographical challenges, and by not having lot lines that require a 20-foot setback from each lot line, we're actually able to navigate the placement of the homes with a little bit more flexibility, which we certainly appreciate. So it doesn't change the number of units. It doesn't change anything about the plan other than removing those lot lines and removing those setback requirements. So it did allow us to place, especially on Lot 2, the home a little bit closer to the road that is being suggested. This is not going to ever be a public road. This is only a private road. And it would serve all 3 duplexes on this road. So Lot 2 now, we're able to put that house a little bit closer to that road and just have 2 driveways serving each side of that. So that's a change that you'll see from the original plans that were submitted. Other than that, Ms. Perlmutter, is there anything else you would like me to address or respond to for description?
I think you should describe the topography and the nature of the landscape around there.
Absolutely.
And why, you know, the wetlands and why you're placing things where they are,
Sure.
where the septic system goes and where all the wells are, just so that we have a good idea of exactly what you're doing.
Happy to do so. So the real vision for this project is to disturb the landscape as little as possible. Okay, so the road placement is where it is because it is the only place that the road is allowed to go. There's a curve on Beechwood Avenue on both ends of the property that makes sight distance from a curb cut challenging. So we went out a year ago now with the then Public Works Director, now Chief of Police, and the Deputy Chief of Police, and identified where they were willing to sign off on a curb cut. And that's where you'll see the curb cut permit that has been approved by the town, as well as the location on the plan. So the road has been designed to be as short of a road as we can have. Again, we want to disturb the parcel as little as possible. And I think it's just worth mentioning, I know that you all know this, but I'll just mention it again. These are all intended to be sold with income limits and future sales price limits. So we also, we don't want to be spending money on road work that we don't need to be spending as well. So it's not purely to keep the landscape as little disturbed, it's also from a financial standpoint. So the wetlands are in that bottom right corner as you're looking at the plans. There's this kind of large wetland area. Ms. Crockett-Curran, is it possible to have the plans up on the screen?
Yes.
And we have had those wetlands delineated. Longview Partners did them first, and then Walsh went out and GPS'd we delineated them more specifically. So you'll see that on the plans, there's been a couple of different kind of lines of those. Walsh is very confident about the lines that they have submitted with this proposal. So staying away from those wetlands, certainly important. They're not significant vernal pools on the property. There's not a wetland area that is significant enough to cause concern from a development standpoint. But if you'll see, they are delineated in that bottom corner there and across the backland there. In the center where you see kind of a wet area delineated, that is actually a former quarry site that's full of water when it rains. Okay, so that's a place that we cannot put foundations because there is a giant hole. It's going to be part of the process of making this parcel livable for folks is addressing that particular quarried piece as we're working at this. Ms. Crockett-Curran, are the more recent plans available that don't show the lot lines, please?
Did we get copies of these new plans?
You sure did.
This one, yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. So the Longview Partners went out and identified test pits, and you'll see on other copies of these plans, multiple test pits per ordinance, 2 per house building unit identified. And Longview submitted the descriptions of those test pits. It's kind of a fun day. I was out there with them with their excavator and jumping into the holes with a little measuring stick to make sure. Kind of cool to learn about how that process is done. So we've identified where the best soils are and where we think the ideal septic systems for each unit are, and those are what's delineated on this plan. So setting those septic systems in place first really did dictate then where the homes could be located. This lot does have a lot of not just granite on the property and the hole in the center where granite was quarried, but there's also a lot of slope up and down on this property. So finding places to site the homes that would be not requiring a huge amount of blasting or fill was also important. The unit that's at the very bottom, that one will need to have some fill to bring that to a place where we can be building there. We've been working with the builder Patco. Steve Burke is our Patco representative, and he has been great about going out on the site as well with the Walsh team and the Longview team to really think about where it makes sense to build these houses.
Sorry, which one is the bottom?
I'm sorry, the lowest, thank you, yes.
Number 3?
Yep, unit 3. So the driveways are really kind of challenging to figure out on this parcel. In an ideal world, we would not have the site distance challenges on Beechwood, and that first home, the top left home, unit 1, would actually be facing Beechwood and would have drives directly off of Beechwood. But that's not an option here. So we are working with this road. The middle home there, Unit 2, that's really the best place to place that, given the ledge challenges, and that dictated where Home 1 was placed. We really want these homes to feel separate and distinct from one another. So we've been messing around with the driveway designs and parking situation, and this is where we have landed as of right now.
One of the things your maps don't show, they don't show a lot of the surrounding area. And I noticed that Tyler Brook comes in there, and you're in the Batson River area as well. Do you know if the Batson River watershed overlays your property?
I do not believe so, because that has not come up from either Longview or Walsh, and they certainly have assessed the property from a shoreland zone, perspective, but I can certainly confirm that with them and make sure that that's the case.
I would like to.
Sure.
And explain to me why the septic system, the septic field for building 1 cannot come off that 50-foot.
Yeah, great question. So the challenge there is that while there is a second site that would meet the ordinance requirements for having that second option on that parcel, or what was a parcel and now is simply a separate unit, it's not as strong. And so the recommendation from Longview and Walsh is to use that septic field. We recognize that it does intrude into the 50-foot buffer. We have asked for a waiver on that, only for that septic field. Our hope is that because it is not to put in any sort of structure or infrastructure of any form, it simply will continue to be green space. It will simply be a little bit tucked into that buffer. That is just the ideal septic site location to serve Unit 1.
Okay. I'm going to stop asking questions there because I know that several of my board members are going to have a lot of them, especially
Sure.
in terms of water. But I want to mention one housekeeping item. And it's very nice that you provided the deeds and the minutes and everything, but you're a corporation, and you need a certificate of good standing in this application.
I believe that we submitted that. Did we not send that into the office?
I didn't see one in there,
On the SharePoint?
yeah.
If I have failed to send that, we have that. We just went through, this project has been fully financed through the Genesis Fund and Bangor Savings, and they also required that certificate of good standing. So we have that very recently secured. I'm happy to send it along if I have failed to do so.
I'll double check the SharePoint, but if
Yeah,
it's not in there,
make
we
sure that
can.
that's in there.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to turn it over to any board member who would like to ask questions. Larry, you look like you have a lot.
May I, before you, I want to, Jim Logan unfortunately is not able to be here this evening, so if you have questions that are specific to soils and things like that, I want to apologize in advance. That is not something I speak fluently on. So happy to, I'm going to grab my notebook, write down any questions that I'm not able to address, and I'll make sure to get those back to you. Hold on. All right, let's do this.
So, Marissa, I do have a few questions. So, my first question, you sort of preempted. So, what's the relationship between Neighborhood Housing Trust and Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust too? Is this like a umbrella versus and a derivative organization?
Great question. So the Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust and Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2 were formed as two separate nonprofit organizations in 2018 at the request of the town of Kennebunkport. So those are legally who we operate as. This, in 2024, the Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust Board, and the two organizations share a board. So when I say the Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust Board, know that that means both Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust and Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2. The Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust is a C3 nonprofit, and the Housing Trust 2 is a C4 nonprofit. The Neighborhood Housing Trust is our doing business as name at this point. In 2024, the board voted to expand our mission to include the towns of Kennebunk and Arundel as well, and it felt important to change our name to better reflect our geographic area. We also really liked the idea of neighborhood housing trust, that we are here to build the community, and that involves neighbors. So that's the organizational structure. We are legally Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust, or in this case, Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2. We operate our planning board applications under our C4. And then we solicit donations to those nonprofits, and we operate on our social media and our website as Neighborhood Housing Trust.
So all the legal documents for this project will be under Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2.
Correct, and that is also all of our financing that we've just completed on December 17th are also through Kennebunkport Heritage Housing Trust 2.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I did have a couple of questions on this. So, so it seems the whole area drains to the northeast into the direction of the Batson River. So I appreciate you looking into whether or not this is in the, you know, that area, that floodplain area.
I know,
I read it's not in the floodplain area, but the.
I know Acorn says it's, I
It's
mean,
not,
they looked
yeah.
at the maps, it's not in the shoreland, but it is in, I mean, that's the watershed.
Yeah,
Eventually,
the
everything goes down into the Batson,
Yeah,
which doesn't seem like a problem to me, but
I don't know.
that's just,
If you could just double check.
everything's in a watershed, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So,
So I was interested in the quarry site, and you say that's full of water when it rains, but then it
Yes.
dries out when it doesn't rain?
Fairly. I mean, it's not a naturally occurring wetland, if you will.
Yeah.
You can see that it at one point would have been fairly flush with the surrounding land.
Yeah.
And would have been solid rock. And that solid rock has been removed and has left us with what I think is a charming quarry site. But it is wet when it is raining or when snow is melting.
So I did look through some of the results from your test borings or test excavations, test pits, I guess. And it seems like that most of the soil in there is fairly porous, very high permeability. So is there going to be flow from the bottom of this quarry site through the property? And I guess the question is then, is this going to affect the foundations? Are you going to have are you going to just put these on slabs, or are you going to make an actual excavation like a basement?
So the design that we have received from Patco is for full basements, 7.5-foot height basements.
Yeah.
Once we are in the build process and Patco is able to get into the site with their excavation crews and really assess what will work there, we know that Unit 3, so if we want to talk, Unit 1 is at 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
Unit 2 is
Yeah.
at 1 o'clock, Unit 3 is at 5 o'clock. So we know that for Unit 3, it has to be a foundation, a full basement foundation because of the topography of that space. Unit 2 and Unit 1 may end up being slab foundations, depending on how much ledge they identify once we get in there. Again, we need these homes to sell at price points that working people can afford. And if we have to spend $80,000 blasting through granite, that really doesn't make that happen. So our preference would be to have full basements, but we recognize that the topography may require one or two of the units to have slab foundations instead.
Okay, and of course, another one of my interests on this is, because it seems to me this site's going to be pretty saturated most of the year, are you concerned about frost heave on like any of the roads or the housing foundations if you put a slab in there?
I don't believe that I have heard any concerns from Walsh or from Patco. And I've walked the site through all of the seasons. We've owned this property now since April of 2022. I've been on the site spring, summer, fall, and winter. It is at quite a high elevation. So it isn't, I haven't, outside of the parts that are really very clearly wet, the rest of the site does not read as wet when you're walking across it. It is really quite a solid site, in part because of its elevation.
Okay, thank you. So another question I had was, your map shows a wetlands, okay, we talked about the quarry one, but now there's another wetlands to the southeast, but then you stop defining that at the boundary. But my concern is, how big is that wetlands to the southeast? I mean, is this really a wetland, or is it like the fringe of a pond or something? What's going on? If you could expand, if you could define that wetland, the extent of that wetland to the southeast, I'd feel a lot more comfortable about what's going on here. And then I was very interested in the identification of a non-significant vernal pool in the middle of one of the wetlands. And so, what's the significance of the how do you describe the non-significant vernal pool? What the impact, how does that differ from a wetland and what we're looking at here? I'm a little lost in how you have that in the middle of a wetland.
That is a Jim Logan question, so that is one that I will need to get back to you on.
That's very interesting. Haven't seen this before. Very interested in this one. And then, okay, also I noticed that you have some culverts under your road, your Landon Road, your Landon Woods Road. And two of them are 15-inch and the one on the south is 12-inch. Do they all not need to be 15-inch?
I believe that Walsh Engineering does not believe that they do need to be, but I can confirm with them why that is. But I have to trust that they engineered the property as they feel it needs to be engineered.
Well, my question really was, is there a statutory requirement for a minimum diameter? I don't know. I mean, if they could just double check it, that'd be great.
Sure.
So Larry, isn't that, I think might be one of the items that Acorn pointed out, the need to go to 15, and I think Walsh responded to that, although I don't have that in front of me.
I didn't read a response.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
Okay.
they did.
Okay, if you could just double check. that'd be
no,
great.
I think, all I'm saying is I think you've hit something that is in play.
Oh, all right, okay. And, so, also, the layout of the septic system is pretty interesting. So, and I think Walsh mentioned this, but is the separation between septic area for house number 2 far enough away from the wetland?
Yes, that was, well, when I met with Walsh and we were going over these plans, the rulers were out, the making sure that we were meeting all of the requirements for distance was part of the conversation. Again, I have to trust the engineers there, that they have designed a property that meets the requirements.
Okay. So, in a related setback issue, on the drawing C 2.0, in the upper left-hand corner, northwest from building 1, you've got this 50-foot well setback from right-of-way. That's on Beechwood Avenue, but that's from the edge of Beechwood Avenue, right? So, is the right-of-way, isn't the right-of-way for Beechwood Avenue an additional 25 feet or something? If you could just, see what I'm saying? You've got it here.
Usually the road is 50 feet, but the paved part is usually about 20.
Well, but they're
So
saying,
it's-
but right-of-way. See, they've actually specified right-of-way.
Yep.
That's not the right-of-way, that's the edge of the road. That's what I'm saying. So if you could just double-check that one.
Can you, I'm sorry, I'm not quite, so you're curious about,
Well, you've got a 50-foot well setback dimension for right-of-way. Okay, and this refers to the right-of-way for Beechwood Avenue. But you've actually shown to the edge of Beechwood Avenue, and I'm pretty sure the right-of-way for Beechwood Avenue is like 50 feet.
okay?
So if you could just, it's a detail, it's not gonna make a big difference, but it would be nice to show it on the drawing.
Is there a well plan there?
Well, I
No,
don't
the well's
know.
way far
Yeah.
away.
If they could just
It's
double.
up here, it's hidden.
Yep.
If you could push, the way to push that over.
Yep,
Oh, I don't see it on,
well,
I don't
it's,
see the comment on this particular sheet,
No.
but there, on the plans, there's a line here that, and the comment
Yeah.
reads, it's got an arrow, 50-foot well setback from right-of-way. And that's what he's referring to, is
Yep.
that specific phrase.
Okay,
so just clarify that, that seems to be a bit inconsistent. Then, I noticed on your test pits, which I appreciate you doing, I think you did 19 of them. 2 of them are accentuated with an exclamation mark. Test pit 9 and test pit 7 have an exclamation mark. Is that designating something specific, something significant?
no idea, I will find out.
All right. Well, it could be, I mean, it could be some, hidden message there.
They found gold of the.
That would
Okay.
have been very exciting.
I mean, it could be something significant. So, so then, I think, okay, Acorn mentioned this as well. You've got outfalls to control the quantity of water that drains off the site,
Yes.
but then don't you have to have some, doesn't best management practice require silt removal, some kind of
So that,
quality control?
I am glad that you brought that up. So Walsh did respond to that in their response to Acorn's response, okay?
Okay.
And their position on this is clear. Let me see if I can find their language that they used. One second, please. I'm still looking. Werner sent me a follow-up on that today, so one second. So this same question came up with our Heritage Woods project. So Sebago Technics did that design work, Acorn reviewed that. They had the same comment on that review. And Walsh, Sebago Technics responded, and this planning board and the planning department agreed, that because this is not triggering it has only a half acre of impervious, it doesn't trigger that 500 standard that is listed that Acorn has mentioned. And let me see if I can find the exact language. Does that ring a bell with anyone that was here prior?
So the site's too small to need the silt
Right.
removal, okay.
And
All
the,
right.
you know, that is kind of a material point for us. So based on the provided information within the stormwater management report and staff review, this is from the Heritage Woods assessment. It is understood the project does not trigger requirements per Maine DEP Chapter 500 standards, but is subject to the town of Kennebunkport subdivision regulations performance standards for stormwater management, including Article 11, Section 11.15. So the argument is the same here. I actually met with Galen and Bill Walsh this morning, and that is kind of a material point for us. To put in the sort of silt removal system that you're discussing, Walsh estimates will be an additional $100,000 on the project. If that is going to be a requirement, we would like to know that sooner rather than later because we will see subdivision review at that point. It is simply not worth the additional $17,000 per unit for us to move forward in that way.
That would also depend on whether you're going into the watershed. I believe there are state rules on cleanup of stormwater and wastewater before going into a river.
For a defined watershed.
Yeah. I'm not completely sure what the distance is and when you have to put it in there, but I know you just can't put untreated water into like the Kennebunk River,
Sure.
for example.
Sure. This is, yes, we can certainly confirm about watershed. I think to Mr. Francis's point, it is hard to not be part of someone's watershed somewhere. I mean, water does always end up somewhere. So if it's a question of state statutory language regarding the distance from that water body, I feel confident that we are far enough removed from that water body to not trigger any state level requirements, but I'm happy to confirm.
Thank you. And then, so I noticed you had a hammerhead on your road.
Yes.
Does the fire department like it there?
Yes, that is why it's there.
All right. So do you have any fire protection, is there hydrants on this, or are you gonna have a fire protection pond, or are you gonna have individual tanks in the houses? What's the deal on fire?
Great question. So there's no hydrants, there's no public water supply in this area, so the hydrants are out. A fire protection pond is not really a great option. We don't really care for that. So our intention is to go with 13D systems with inside each unit.
13D, okay, all right. Oh, yeah. On your cross-section on your road, you're showing the side slopes as 1.5 to 1. But I mean, the, land use ordinance shows them, they should be 3 to 1, and we approve 2 to 1. And I'm aware that 1.5 to 1 is like, the natural angle of approach for granular material like gravel. but it's still pretty steep. And, you know, could you maybe shallow it out a little bit? 2-to-1 might be better. Anyway, just take a look at that. And then I noticed also they slope down into a drainage area. So the side slopes seem to be steeper than 1.5-to-1. Are you sure you can maintain that slope? Just a detail for Walsh. He'll be able to
Whereabouts,
figure something else.
whereabouts on the drawing we talking?
It's not this drawing, it's
Oh.
another drawing.
Nadia, can you go to a cross-section of the road, please?
Oh, I see, on the
It's a
cross-section.
detail. Yeah, it's a cross-section. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. If they could just take a hard look at that and double-check that if they could shallow it out a little bit, and then double-check how you're gonna maintain a steep side slope on your drainage ditches. And then I was also interested in your emergency spillway cross-section. Where is that going? You really need an emergency spillway? It didn't really pop out at me when I looked at the drawings.
I will confirm with Walsh.
But if you just definitely make sure it's shown on the drawing, because that could affect, well, it could affect, you know, the perception of the site, the suitability of the site. Then I noticed you had a very substantial timber guardrail shown. I don't know where that's going either.
What type of guardrail, sir?
It's a timber guardrail, and it's very hefty. Looks like a standard detail to me, but I didn't see where it was going on the drawing. I mean, you know, in the actual layout of the
It was a
subdivision.
detail without a reference in the
Yep,
plan.
yep. And that's it. That's really all I had.
Great.
Thank you.
Ed?
Hi, Larissa. I have a few questions. First of all, I would just wanted to confirm, I know that you've cleared up the fact that it's going to be one lot, remain one lot. Will you be, or have you already updated the text of the application to reflect that?
No, we did not. I did not resubmit the application itself. I just submitted new plans.
Right, so the text right now still describes the original concept. And
Okay.
I'd ask that that be updated.
Would you like that updated as part of preliminary application review or simply updated with the final application?
I'd like it updated as part of the preliminary.
Okay.
I'd defer to the board if they don't think so, but it seems like a very fundamental change.
Yes.
And there's confusion, I'll get to this next, there's confusion because Acorn then read the text and went on further to basically say there were 3 lots plus open space. And I couldn't figure, anyway.
Yeah, I
it's
hear
all-
that. Acorn's review was done prior to the change. The change was done in response.
I understand. I'm
Okay.
saying they interpreted your original plans differently than I did. I thought there was 3 lots, period. There wasn't a 4th open space lot.
The ordinance requires the open space for a subdivision.
I understand, I didn't see it on the plans.
Okay?
That's, anyway, I just like it
Sure.
to be clean at that level. I want to say something about the Acorn review that has been a point of confusion with me. It says, Acorn says, we are retained by the town of Kennebunkport to review the proposed preliminary subdivision application for 3 lots plus 1 open space parcel. My understanding was that we asked for a review from Acorn for the stormwater plan that was submitted.
Yeah, so I can actually answer that one.
Thank you.
Galen and I checked in with them today.
Yeah.
And basically, the Acorn just said, like, they reviewed stormwater, but along the way, when they noticed something, put it in the memo as well, essentially is what happened.
So my request is, because I know Acorn is going back and revising their plan based on the changes that are made, is could they annotate their report to say which one of these comments that they've made pertain to stormwater and which ones are in addition to that? Because it confuses me when I go through their report to see comments that may or may not, I may or may not agree with, and I can't tell whether it's in their field of expertise or it's their reading of the ordinance. I could give you numerous examples, but it's not clear if Landon Woods Road be proposed as a public street. Please clarify. I thought, what's that have to do with stormwater?
Sure.
No, and
So
I generally had the same issue going through, that I thought their scope was much broader than what we,
So I gave you an obvious one there that clearly to
No,
me
there's-
didn't seem like stormwater, but there's some others that I thought
laced throughout.
maybe they can't make a stormwater analysis unless they know this detail, and I'm open to that. I understand my civil engineering expertise is limited, but if they could annotate the report in that manner,
We can certainly ask them. I
these are
think,
the key ones.
yep, we can,
I'll bet it wouldn't take them that long,
sure, we can certainly
Okay.
ask them about
since
that.
they're doing it anyways. That'd be terrific.
To clarify, this is Galen. To clarify, staff did direct Acorn to just do a review of the stormwater report. And we did follow up with them because we had the similar questions that Mr. Francis raised as well. Because, again, we don't know how this is connected to stormwater. And they said, as part of the review, there are some comments that they mentioned that may not seem like they are directly tied to stormwater, but they are directed towards stormwater, but we can certainly follow up with them.
Right, no, I suspect that there would be some like that, Galen, that, you know, if you was really smart about this stuff, you'd know easily that was stormwater related, but since there's others in there that clearly aren't, I didn't know which ones, and I think they would be able to readily differentiate them. Thanks for checking on that, by the way.
Absolutely.
So I won't go through any of the Acorn stuff then, but I do have a few more questions about the application. On the application, it says that the parcel is 4.79 acres and the net residential area has been calculated to be 3.39. Is that calculation shown somewhere?
No, but I can break that down for you. It will include the infrastructure requirement taken out, as well as the wetland requirement.
That'll be helpful
Sure.
to have that, thank you. And then, let me see. Curious, the individual fire suppression system, is that one per building or one
One-
per unit?
One per unit,
I see. Separate tank for each
I believe so.
one.
That is my understanding.
Okay.
So my question on that, and I guess it was similar with the water well and the septic system, those will all be jointly operated, maintained, and in the case of the well, somebody's got to pay for the electricity for that.
So our intention is to have separate wells for each home. That is
Each home, so you're going to have
6 wells.
6 wells,
Okay,
but
that's it.
3 septic systems. So there will be individual tanks for each home, but 1 field per building.
Ah,
Okay, so that wasn't, I didn't pick that up.
so it doesn't come through in the
You
text
only
right
have
now.
3 wells shown on your plan.
And 3 septic systems.
Septic fields, but the idea is just like what we did at Heritage Woods. There's separate tanks for each house, but there is a shared field for each of the duplexes.
And then the HOA would address how that was maintained.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Because it would be
okay.
also the fire system would have to be somehow covered in the HOA because of the joint maintenance.
So,
There shouldn't be joint maintenance on the fire systems either. They should be per household. So
Or one tank.
she's saying
I believe
three-
that there's 2
she's saying
tanks
6
in
tanks.
per building.
tanks.
Yes, that there's going to be a total of 6.
Completely separate fire
Yes.
systems. Okay.
So Larissa, could you just take that as a request to clarify that for the wells, for the septic, and for the fire suppression system, the sort of separation of the number and the separation of responsibility? I think that'd take care of that. I have a nomenclature, I'll let you finish there.
I'm good.
You okay?
Yep.
Yeah. I don't mean to be rapid fire here. The neighborhood is designed as a green envelope cut neighborhood.
So this is language.
I didn't understand that.
Sure.
language.
So in my 7-year tenure on the Acton, Maine Planning Board, this is language that we used in that space. So
Yeah.
basically what it means is that the neighborhood has been designed to have as little cutting into the established tree structure as possible. So if you think about it all as one big green space, we are cutting only the pocket envelopes that we need in order to meet the requirements. So it is not our intention to have large amounts of grasscape in this property. So no, that's actually not all going to be cut. Absolutely not. That's all showing kind of where the boundary lines are for things like the septic field and the house and the driveways. But can I come up there and touch that screen? Would that be acceptable?
Bring the mic.
I'm bringing.
Use the point.
I feel like I should sing as I come along, but I won't. Okay, so the idea here is that, you know, we need to cut clearly where there's road infrastructure and driveway infrastructure. We need to cut where there's foundation, and we do need to have the amount of space that we need surrounding each building for things like fire break and just to make sure that trees are not falling on top of the houses. But it is not our intention to cut anywhere that we do not need to cut. So there would be nothing cut back here. There would be nothing cut, you know, in these spaces up here. Only where we need to cut is where we're going to cut. This is land in woods, and we intend for it to stay as wooded as possible.
How much wood is there?
It's all new wood. I mean, this was a quarry site. There's not any real tree stands there that are, I would say, older than the last time that this was quarried. Okay,
Do you know
so
what species?
yeah, it's actually a really nice mix of kind of a traditional Maine set of woods. You've got some great birch in there, some beech, some maple, some, you know, your mix of evergreens that we tend to see around here. A lot of it is scrub pine. You know, it's not these, we could imagine the beauty of fir and spruce in there, but no, it's scrub pine, and that's okay too. So it's just a fairly new, lightly forested, and it's easy to walk through. It's not dense. You can see across the parcel quite well, but it is a nice mix of trees. You know, when I'm out there, it really feels like a good set of Maine woods with a nice diversity of tree species.
Are you going to plant some trees along the Beechwood side, which we normally?
We are certainly
for?
open to that. We did meet with the neighbors on December 9th to kind of talk about some of their concerns. And there's a new neighbor that just purchased their property this past June and did not understand that this was happening and is feeling a little sad about that, their kind of country home having perhaps more houses nearby to them. So we have said, you know, if it would be helpful to you, if it would make this less painful, happy to kind of plant some trees. I would not be interested, because I think that because this looks like some really traditional Maine woods, it would not be of interest, I think, to plant like an arborvitae wall. That would not be in keeping. But I don't think there's anything ever wrong with planting some very nice sugar maples to serve future generations, right? So let's get them in the ground and have some beautiful shade trees maybe that are happening there.
Well, the problem with monoculture, one, is that you get a disease pest in there, and you are getting some on maples, and you could lose the whole line of trees.
Sure.
Besides, hardwoods tend to grow up, and you have trunks, and you see through those trunks. And you might want to consider something like balsam fir, if they'll grow there, or spruce.
I think we could certainly meet with, for instance, the Shade Tree Committee or other groups in town that might have some better expertise regarding trees when it comes to that point. We are open to, again, I guess I would just say before I agree, sure, we'll plant, 50 trees out there. Probably not. We can certainly work with local folks that might have trees to donate to the cause, or local nurseries that might be open to that. But again, every dollar that we spend on this project is a dollar that we're passing on to our home buyers. And I think it's important to just kind of acknowledge that the way that our sales price formula works, the original sales price of the home determines the sales price of that home for the rest of the life of that home.
I
So there's
understand that, but you are making a subdivision with more homes than usual on a plot of land. So you might want to consider some scaping there.
Sure, and
And
I just don't
pines
want to
are
prime
very
us too many.
Inexpensive, they grow very fast, they're easy to put in, things like that. You want to look at whether they use salt on the roads there and what's more resilient and things like that.
Certainly.
So, and hopefully you won't put any lawn in there.
It is not our intention. I mean, outside of what really, we need to have a certain amount of non-treed space surrounding each home. And so that would be seeded. We used a native-grown seed mix at Heritage Woods. That's a mixture of 50% clover and 50% slow-growing, low-growing fescue. And that is a mix that I think that we would look to be using again, something that the clover certainly supports our local pollinators, which we are big fans of, and it provides a lawn-type feeling, but one that requires very little care and is better for the local creatures that are trying to live on that land as well.
Well, you're close enough to wetlands, and again, you're near a watershed, so you don't want anything that you would use high fertilizer on
No.
or pesticides.
Agreed.
And hopefully that will be reflected in the HOA.
I believe it is. You should have those documents, and I did find language that I think is quite strong as far as not being allowed to use things that are of that
And
level.
in designing your buildings, you want to also, since you're going to have trees around and birds, you want to make sure you have windows with screens on the outside to help prevent bird strikes.
Yep.
You can design overhangs that will help cut down on reflections on birds. It doesn't take very much today to design to not, to avoid bird strikes. Your financing suggests that, at least as much as I can read right now, suggests that you have $2.6 million plus 600,000.
We have 2.7 million total. We have $2.1 million in financing from Bangor Savings and $600,000 from Genesis Fund. The Genesis Fund is a nonprofit that works with nonprofit builders like ourselves to help fund the initial pre-development work as well as the infrastructure work on projects. So we will be drawing down, and already have been drawing down from the Genesis Fund $600,000 first, and then we'll go into the Bangor Savings money.
Okay, so that's just the infrastructure, because
The 600,000 is the infrastructure, yes.
that's not very much if you're going to be blasting a road.
We believe that it will be sufficient. We didn't, when we were budgeting out this project, we did talk to folks that do roads, and we think that we have budgeted appropriately for the project.
Okay. All right.
There are a lot of questions.
I haven't finished. I don't know what happened there. Okay.
Continue.
You started talking about trees and it was all over.
She looked at me and I just took a
I got on my favorite subject, sorry.
Heck, Dad.
I don't know, is it all right if I keep going?
Please.
Just a few more? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just was a curiosity. It's a private road. How are you going to do mail delivery?
The mailboxes will be along Beechwood, as the other properties on Beechwood have.
Cool. On the waivers requested, I personally didn't have any problem with the sidewalk requirement. It seems to me that that would actually be a plus to not have sidewalks. The right-of-way, you want to, on this private road, instead of being 50-foot, you're looking for 40-foot?
Correct. We would keep the road standards the same as far as the travel way, but we're looking for a smaller right-of-way on the road, just because of the challenges of the lot and trying to squeeze between the quarry
Yeah, yeah.
and the wetlands. So
And you're doing, as I understood, you're going to do overhead utilities?
absolutely.
So you won't be needing the right-of-way for burying utilities and the like, or so. Again, I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. Request a waiver, and I was wondering if this one was changing based on some words you had earlier, for a 50-foot buffer from Beechwood Ave.
Only on that one spot where you see the septic field. So happy to respect the buffer, that 50-foot buffer across the entire space, except for the little corner of that septic field that really wants to cut into that buffer.
And the 50-foot buffer, I'm not as familiar with the requirement as I guess I should be, is what?
It's for subdivisions. So because we are building a subdivision, we are required to have a 50-foot vegetated buffer between the main roadway and our first build site.
Okay, but visually, you're just using this for a leach field, it sounds like.
Correct. There will be no buildings or infrastructure
There'll be
on that space.
grassed and
Yep,
covered.
and that might be an ideal location to put some of those evergreen trees that Dr. Perlmutter has recommended.
I don't have to pay for somebody to make green.
That I
ones with deep roots.
don't know.
No,
that
no,
you're
not
gonna
on
be
the
allowed
septic
to
field.
put
I
it
meant
over.
along Beechwood Avenue, in the buffer that it still will be there.
Just a follow-up on Nina's question there. this suggests that the limit of clearing is well in from the edge of Beechwood Ave. You're saying that the natural coverage of trees out there is sparse? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not sparse, it's just, it's not, you know when
You
you
can
walk.
see through it.
You can see through it. You know, if you're walking through the woods, there's woods that you're like, oh, I can see ahead of me, I know where my dog is, and there's woods that you're like, oh my goodness, I can't see where, this is the first. Okay, so it's just you, and please, I encourage everyone to go out and walk the site. I mean, it's a nice little walk in the woods.
Okay.
That's something that we may do anyway.
And then the last one, number 4, I didn't understand. We request a waiver on 415 7.2.D27.
Did I not delineate what that meant?
I'm just reading.
I believe you. I will have to look at it. Hold on one second. Ms. Crockett-Curran, can you let me know what that is referencing, since I apparently failed to do so in the waiver?
let
Linden
me
Woods is
pull it up.
not in the watershed of a great pond, it goes on to say, which I agree, but I didn't understand what the waiver was you were looking for.
It's- I don't know what that is.
Ed, can you say what the
Yeah.
number was again?
415 7.2.D27.
Yeah, that's an erosion and sedimentation control plan.
Ah,
According to the Maine Erosion and Sedimentation Control Handbook, best management practices. The board can waive submission of that plan if the subdivision is not in the watershed of a great pond.
okay.
The proposed subdivision will not involve grading which changes drainage patterns, and that's one of the questions I had, because there are other requirements there. And the addition of impervious surfaces such as roofs and driveways is less than 5% of the area of the subdivision. So it's not just the watershed of a great pond, but the question I had is, are you going to be grading and changing drainage patterns? It looks like you're going to be putting in riprap and changing some things around, so I wonder if that isn't needed.
I'm not smart.
I have some questions.
I'm not smart enough to say. I'd like to have Walsh weigh in on that.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
This was a waiver recommended by Walsh, so I think that they can quickly write up something.
Support it.
Yep.
You know, just, yeah.
Yep.
So we understand it in layman's terms. Yeah. I'm going to change this topic on attachments included to meet requirements of 7.2. Deed restrictions will include year-round residency, maximum sales price formula, and income restricted buyer. Can you say what you mean by year-round residency?
Absolutely. It's really important to us. One of the reasons why this trust was formed is that Kennebunkport finds itself in the unenviable position of having just about 50% of its housing stock owned by seasonal residents. And while we all benefit from seasonal residents and are grateful for the energy that they bring and just kind of the community that they add to, it's really hard when your town gets to this place. It's hard to find people like you to volunteer on boards like this. It's hard to find people to work in the community. So our homes, one of the requirements for being a homeowner, and that our homeowners agree to when they purchase our homes, is that they must be a year-round resident. That's non-negotiable.
I don't know what that means. I'm
They
asking you.
must, this must be their not only their only residence, we also do not allow them to own any other homes, but they have to live in that home 12 months of the year.
They can't take a vacation.
They absolutely can take a vacation, but that's not living someplace else. They can't live in this home 7 months a year and then live with a family member elsewhere 5 months a year, or however, that might look. They must have this as their primary residence where they have residency 12 months of the year.
So no Airbnb.
Yeah, absolutely not.
I'm curious how you envision, you already have experience on this. How do you enforce this?
That's a really great question, right? There's a balance to be reached between invasion of people's personal lives. We currently at Heritage Woods, 5 out of 6 of our homes are owned by people that work full-time in this community. It would be pretty obvious to us if they were not residing here in the community. They have full-time jobs that they are employed in year-round. And the 6th home is owned by a fully disabled veteran, and really we don't feel that we need to be checking up on what they are doing as far as their work is concerned. So the The checkup is really, it's about trust and it's about staying connected to your residents and kind of just knowing what's happening. I mean, they have agreed to this when they purchase the home. I think that it would become clear if they simply weren't here 3 or 4 or 5 months of the year. We would kind of clue into that, and we'd need to have a conversation about what was happening and what their intentions were. I mean, certainly life happens. We may have a homeowner at some point that has a family crisis in another state, and they need to go and be with their family for a couple of months to work through that crisis. That's not our business, and it's certainly not something that we would look to be policing. But the intention here is that the people that own these homes are committed to this community and live here year-round to contribute to this community. And as far as the formula, the maximum price formula, we have that very clearly delineated as well when people purchase our homes.
I know what they are, in getting them initially. Now I'm gonna put the house on the, I decide I need to sell my house that I purchased through this process. How's that gonna be managed?
Great, we've actually have experience with that too. We just went through this in June. One of the Heritage Woods homes was sold. So what happens is that we have it in the language, again, when they buy the home, they sign many, many documents, and including one that commits to this maximum price formula and the process for triggering sale. So they have to let us as an organization know that they intend to sell their home, and we have 60 days to decide if we wish to purchase the home as the housing trust. And then we would then sell it as ourselves.
So that's the first time I've heard that the housing trust still has an active role in this after the initial sale.
We absolutely do. Because that's part of how we maintain the affordability. So by requiring them to first let us know that they're selling and giving us first right of refusal, we are then connected to the sale. So they've also agreed to a maximum price. So we take the original sales price of the home, and we have a formula that they agree to about how that sales price is going to increase over time, and it's tied to incomes in the state of Maine. So that it's, and they have to sell to another buyer that is in the same area median income bracket that they were in when they purchased the home.
But they handle all of that.
We actually offered to handle that for them, which is what we did in June.
Okay.
So we held a lottery to find the buyer for the house in June.
They engaged you to do that?
Correct.
Okay. So part of the HOA process will be to, one of the members will be the housing trust.
That is our request, is that there be a seated, non-voting. It's not our interest to govern them. That's not our role. But we are requesting that we be a non-voting member of whatever HOA is formed, of the association board is
I
formed.
would think that it would have to be more than a request in order to maintain the visibility and control that you're talking about.
There will be deed restrictions on these properties. I mean, in theory, if the
Right.
housing trust ceased to exist, there would still be legal controls over how these houses are sold moving forward. But it is our preference to continue to be actively involved in the selling process of any future homes.
There's a duration to that, isn't there?
There is not. There can be. Ours will not have any limit on that. So many of the homes in the state, the part of the affordable homeownership program that Maine Housing runs, they have a 15-year cap on affordability, and then after that, the houses are allowed to sell at market. It is not our pleasure to have a cap like that. It is our intention that the entire life of this home is going to be to serve people in the same income bracket that it served the first
And the
time.
deed restriction will say that.
Make that very clear.
The one other thing I had on this page was the estimate that you have of daily vehicle traffic from 6 units, 60 trips per day. Could you ask whoever did that to show the basis of estimate?
So I can, and I did, so Walsh actually responded to that in their, in the SharePoint document. I think that got sent to you all.
Somebody else had that comment? You're saying?
Yep, it was part of the planning department's memo to us, and to you, rather, that we responded to. So I found it originally just by Googling, and because it lists in the ordinance the book that you're supposed to use to calculate this with. So I Googled it, I put in our units, and that's what it spit out. I heard from the planning department that they would like something more specific, and so Walsh responded with something that looks more formal.
Okay.
And they came up with the same number.
So, no, I'm not questioning the number. It didn't seem unreasonable. It seemed high, actually, to
I agree.
me. But somebody said, oh, well, each one's going to have N cars, and they're going to make X trips a day, and I just wanted that to be explicit. And it
Yeah.
sounds like if I read the Walsh response, I will see
I
that.
believe so.
Okay. there's a Town of Kennebunkport application for activities land use permit that's in the application, which I didn't quite understand. I think it's for the curb cut. And it says the name and address of contractor must be certified in erosion control practices through DEP and provide certificate number. Oh, if working in shoreland zone. Oh, so maybe it doesn't apply. I was wondering who's doing the work for the curb cut?
We are very eager to find that as well. So as soon as we have planning board approval in place, we will, actually, as soon as we have preliminary planning board
You put it
approval in
out
place,
for
it is
bid.
our intention to go to bid for road construction. And so that as soon as we have final planning board approval in place, our road construction contract will have been awarded, and we'll be able to start building once we have approvals.
The town doesn't do that.
No.
Yeah, okay. Believe it or not, I'm out. Thank you, Larissa.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Do
Appreciate it.
you need a DEP permit?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. All right.
I'm done.
Okay.
Couple of questions about trees. I think they're covered. You're gonna address any trees of significant size and you're cutting minimally.
So I've actually submitted a waiver request for that. The process of doing a full survey of this property, searching for those trees, is really quite costly. I have not, I mean, other than anecdotally, I can tell you that I've walked the property repeatedly, and I have never said to myself, dear word, that's a big tree. I guess the response would be this. It is not our intention to cut a single tree that is not in the pathway of the road, which can only go where that road can go, or in the homes placement, or in the septic field placement. I have not seen a tree that, I was a land trust board member for many years. I've built trail across beautiful properties. It is never my intention to ever disturb a tree that has been there longer than, my grandparents, or myself even. Trees are wonderful, and they are a gift that we should be preserving whenever we possibly can. So I would welcome the opportunity to not do a full survey of the property to identify the trees that are 21 inches in diameter at 4 feet, I think is the requirement. And because it was a fully quarried site, there isn't old growth of any form on this property. Nor have I identified, like I said, any trees that were significant that caught my eye and made me say, oh, that's a beautiful, what a beautiful old tree. Happy to, again, walk with any of you that would like to, take a look yourselves. We haven't had snowfall yet. The ground is frozen. It's great walking weather out there to get your report, your feels on that. But again, because we are really looking to not disturb the site in any way that doesn't need to happen, we would like to have a waiver on that requirement.
I think the main concern is if it's in the, where you will be clearing for a house lot or roadways or septic systems.
Right. And I guess
rather than a survey of the entire, it's pretty scrubby up there in those old quarries.
It is. It's very scrubby, and again, because the road has no other possible location, I don't know what our solution would be if there was a tree that had 22-inch diameter at 4 feet. I mean, the road can. It's not it's not that we like the road to go there. It's that there is no other location that public safety is comfortable with the road going.
Well, oftentimes when we have trees in roadways and so forth that are significant, they may require trees to be replanted somewhere else, not the large tree, but a new tree
Sure.
and so forth. And it is possible to just, we have given waivers for surveying trees that are not in the clearing area. So it can be just restricted to the clearing area. But I think,
Yep.
I think,
That answers that. We'll see that when we get to that point.
yeah.
Okay, and happy to. I mean, if there is a tree of significant size that people are, feeling very, myself included, really disturbed by having, had to be removed, happy to replace it with, the same species, a couple of them even, to try to replace
There are
that.
sets of
Right.
rules for how that happens. And
Sure.
that wouldn't be applying to the preliminary anyway.
Okay.
Just curious about that. And I haven't really dealt with condominiums. Is this a COA or an HOA?
It would be an HOA, is my understanding.
HOA, okay. And as part of that, So there are 6 wells, there are 3 leach fields, but 6 septic systems,
Yes,
and 6 fire suppression systems.
Yes.
Are those maintained by the homeowners association?
yes, no, by the homeowner individuals.
The homeowner individual, okay.
Yes, the shared, so, once we get through preliminary and then are ready to move on to the final application, at that point, I will be sitting down with both Patco and our attorney to identify, limited common areas, things that are required in a condominium process.
Thanks. And again, this doesn't affect the preliminaries to having,
The only condo I know is that one downtown that had to be divided up.
everything else has been a subdivision. That's my only question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we just, before we leave the tree thing that you brought up, Larissa, you're worried that it's gonna be an undue expense to do a tree survey, and I'm wondering why it isn't as simple as you or someone else in the housing trust walking the land and doing a self-certification that says, here, there are no trees that are greater than, and Nina, help me out, what's the size? Is it 16 inches?
21-inch diameter at 4 feet.
21 inch. There are none. Or there's only 3, and here they are.
If the planning board is open to that, I'm happy to do that. I think that the waiver request was because it looks more like it's expected to be a professional survey experience. If the board and myself and any volunteers can take care of that process through the areas that are identified as being developed and, do so with, the limited technology of like a handheld GPS, right, that's marking where those are going to be, happy to do that.
Well, I think,
Well, there's a stick that allows you to do that very easily, a measuring stick. And,
$10 to buy a tape measure. It's a DBH tape measure, and it'll show you, calculates the diameter.
actually, we just had a shade tree member that went and did all of our trees, over 1,000, doing that all through the summer. So you could hire her. She's one of the firemen.
she might volunteer.
Oh, no, if the planning board, I guess I would want to be very clear, that is labor intensive, and I am the only staff member we have. So, and I'm not sure how many of my board members want to join me out there in the woods with this project. So,
Why don't we see if we need a site visit first?
sure.
Okay, and then we can determine whether this needs to be done and whether it can be self-certified. I
Great.
think we can make that decision.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
I know a couple of times it's been said that the fire chief is good with that. Do we have a letter that says he's good with that?
I will certainly get a letter. My understanding was that was discussed with the fire chief when we were talking about how to deal with
I guess what we normally see is a letter saying that
Sure.
I'm okay with the turnaround, I'm okay with the fire suppression system.
Yeah, it's an
And-
approval letter.
Yeah.
The fire suppression system, the turnaround, the 40-foot road width.
Because the turnaround here goes into the setback.
20-foot setback, yeah.
And I'm assuming that's a similar issue that we have here. So I don't know if this needs to be moved.
Well, not quite, because that isn't going to disturb anything, but that is encroaching on a 20-foot setback from a neighbor's
Neighbor
property.
property. So is that, and then all this, and still we had the issue with runoff on the other one, and there's a lot of change going on here that's pushing water possibly off into the.
Can I ask
neighbor's land.
code enforcement, that setback, the side setback, it's not a building that's going in there, but rather a driveway, a road. I thought that
I'm not sure.
there might be a different consideration on how close your driveway can get to your neighbor's lot.
Well, that is an impervious surface that's going in.
No, I understand, but I thought,
But it's different than a shed or a building, agree, but
Yeah.
just what's the code requirement?
that's
It's
the
a
question.
5-foot requirement.
Say again, Gail?
5-foot requirement from the property line
Okay.
for any driveway.
So if we consider that a driveway there, and I know it's attached to the road and all, but it's a turnaround,
Then we may be.
I think we'd be okay,
All right.
if code enforcement's okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Don't go.
Does there need to be any letter about, because this is adding a cut onto Beechwood, lines of sight and that sort of thing?
That's the curb cut
That's
application
the
that was
curb cut
approved.
application, all right. And what about snow removal? Where will snow be plowed?
That will be, well, I can't really speak to that because I'm not a snowplow driver, but my experience would be that they would be plowing into the road and that we could imagine that they're going to be pushing snow to the sides of the road and to the end.
All right. They don't have to dump much snow in one spot.
No,
There's enough room.
right, and certainly would not be dumping into Beechwood.
Okay, good, thanks.
The waiver for the underground utilities, I'm assuming there's a reason that that's a requirement?
Our subdivision ordinance only really allows overhead utilities for specifically affordable developments. So it's a requested waiver because in our, and I think that we noted this in the memo, but in our subdivision ordinance, the board has to specifically okay
Yeah,
the
I
use of
guess-
overhead utilities.
I guess my question is, it's a requirement for some reason. And it's not a requirement because it costs more.
It's aesthetics.
Is
I
it
think.
just aesthetics, or is there a safety or another issue there?
Well, there's another issue because if you have trees growing near, the trees take down your power lines, it's
Yeah.
much safer. And
Yes.
doesn't interrupt power to houses if you
So,
have them underground.
Yeah, so I think it's not just a monetary thing, there's other things that need to be considered,
There are other-
safety being one of them.
Is it very expensive to put in the underground utilities?
Yes.
Especially if it's 6 units.
I always thought they just came and trenched it down below the frost line.
Anytime you are going underground, it is going to be, there's blasting, it's a lot more expensive.
Okay,
All right, that's it for the moment.
okay. Next.
I had one question related to guest parking
Yes.
and the 20-foot main road, 12-foot wood driveway, I guess, into Unit 1. Doesn't look like there's a lot of accommodation for guests.
We hear
with-
this.
With 1 to 3 foot shoulders.
We hear this. So at Heritage Woods, we also only have 2 parking spots per unit. And the residents, owners rather, that are there have navigated that with their guest requirements. There simply is not, the lot is challenging. And we can imagine guests parking on the main road and walking into Lot 1. We also can imagine people finding ways to park in that kind of fire break area that's surrounding the home. It is our, belief that people will figure out how to navigate that, and that will be a consideration that people have when they are looking to buy the home or not buy the home.
No? Peter?
I'm Joe. Peter, you done?
I'm good, yeah.
It's there is gonna be a revised subsurface wastewater disposal, because on this December memo from Acorn, it talks about, the plan showed for smaller dwellings, 1,200 to 1,300 square foot dwellings, and you were talking about 2,000-ish, when you put them all together, is that?
I think, though, that because each home will have its own tank, I believe that they are being, that's maybe what they were referencing as far as, the largest home is 1,300 square feet. But I can get clarification on that from Walsh.
Yeah, because it talks about some additional completed subsurface wastewater disposal design for each of the systems, so I don't know if that's somewhere on the SharePoint I didn't see, or needs to be just completed.
Okay?
Anybody else? More questions up?
Well, the only comment I wanted to add is, I think we need to decide whether we're gonna consider this complete or not.
Yeah.
And I, for one, I think would like to wait until we get the updated text.
Sure.
to say this is complete, and I'm questioning, would it be possible that we have by our next meeting, we have an updated, we have Acorn's response to Walsh's reply, and we have Walsh, someone from Walsh, and someone from what's Jim's last? Logan's organization at the meeting.
I can request both of those. So for as anything that I can get to you, I absolutely can say, yes, you will have that in time. I cannot, I don't know when Acorn will get to their responses.
Of course.
And if you have a way to get Walsh to move more quickly, I would love to hear it, because we are, we submitted this to Walsh March 28th. So we are really working hard to try to move this project forward. I will certainly speak to Walsh. It is not part of our contract with them to have them represent us through the planning board process. Again, we are working to make this as cost-effective as we can. But if you would like to speak to an engineer, I will speak to Walsh and see if there is someone that can come and join. Werner Gilliam has been the project manager on this for us at Walsh. So, lives in town. It's not a far drive for him. He might be willing to come in, he's not an engineer, but he can come and speak to their work, I think, if he has the time.
I just think it might expedite the process, that's all, but I understand. If not, we can do without, and we'll ask our questions, and we'll go another
Would
meeting.
that be part of the, need to do that as part of the preliminary or after?
I think to get through the preliminary.
Preliminary, I think. yeah.
Well, hold on a minute. For our alternates, I want to read something, and maybe review for everybody. In our subdivision code, it says approval of a preliminary plan shall not constitute approval of a final plan or intend to approve the final plan, but rather shall be deemed an expression of approval of the design of the preliminary plan as a guide to the preparation of the final plan. Okay, so that's pretty broad.
Agreed.
And you can go either way. If you feel that you need a lot more substantive information,
Right.
then I would recommend not voting to complete this particular session, this meeting. But you can go forward, since they have a design, and it's clearly up here, even though it doesn't have all the particulars that you want. You can go forward and find it complete and go forward with the next move, which could either be a public hearing or to go to the final plan. A public hearing can be held for the preliminary plan, for the final plan, or just one of them if you want, or for both. But I think my suggestion is that we schedule a site walk.
Correct.
I think that would help a lot, because I still have a lot of questions about drainage
Yeah.
and where riprap is and everything close to the neighbors' things. So no matter what we do, I think we need to schedule a site walk for this.
Well, one thing that we probably need to clarify then is our experience with site walks has been that they've been led by the engineer. And I think what I'm hearing here is that the engineers have not been engaged to be part of this review process. So I'm not sure that it would do me any more good to schedule a public site walk than it would be to just go up there and look around. I think to understand the design, that's why I was looking for more access to engineering, that's all.
Well, a site walk requires that certain boundaries be flagged so that you know where the open space is and you know where the clearing areas are going to be, or the part that.
It does?
we're thinking with-
I don't,
Yeah.
I didn't know, I haven't seen that written anywhere.
Yeah, it has
I
to
know
be
that's been
flagged.
our experience, but again,
No, it's written down, but I forget where. Okay, I'll
Okay.
find it for you.
No, that's fine. I just want, if we're asking Larissa to set up a site,
But that is
What
an
are the
expense. Somebody
expectations?
has to go out and flag those areas, you know.
Certainly, is not our intention to ever be combative in any way with the planning board. I do believe that at our sketch plan meeting, the site plan was waived, a site walk was waived. But I am happy to look back and see if I am remembering that correctly.
It may have been waived for the sketch plan, but it can be scheduled for the preliminary plan. And I know that's more expense, but it really helps the planning board to look at the topography and where things are going and what you're saying about tree growth and where drainage patterns are going to be. And that seems to be, drainage seems to be an important aspect of this particular subdivision.
What parts of the property are flagged currently? You've got test pits out there.
We have test pits flagged, I believe boundary kind of marker flags are out there from preliminary boundary surveying that was done by Lower Village Survey. I think that there are some flags out there for that as well, although she hasn't done the final markers.
Anything suggesting roadways or where placement the house lots are?
Not yet.
Okay.
Those are not out there. The curb cut markers may be there. That's a possibility, but I don't believe that there are further delineations out there from a tagging standpoint.
Adding on to Ed's list, also updating the application itself? to-
Yes, I've got that on my list.
Okay, I figured you did. If-
Madam Chair, I have a few questions, if that's all right.
I guess.
Galen's asking if he can ask questions.
Galen?
Yep. Yeah, Larissa, if we could just confirm, we'll work with the fire chief on the 13D systems. I just need to get better clarification on, is there going to be 2 wells for the property, 1 for the fire suppression and 1 for the water supply to the residents?
Absolutely not. No. The system, my understanding from talking to Patco is that the system would include tanks inside the homes. It would not include a separate well.
Okay, separate tanks from the water supply, or?
My understanding, and again, I'm happy to get clarification, but my understanding is that they are holding tanks, that they are not being, that the water is there being held, ready to deploy. It is not being pumped in from a well, in live time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen that, and of course, that implies you're gonna have a basement for each house.
Or the house design, so for those
There's a room
because there's a
for
possibility of not having access to basements because of the topography of the site, we do have a secondary house set of plans that includes between the 2 units, additional physical space that would act as utility space in the same way that a basement would.
How are you gonna prevent freezing in the winter? Because you're gonna have a tank full of water, right?
Well, it would
For your
be,
fire suppression, that's what I'm talking about.
it would
When
be
I've seen this-
interior.
When I've seen this, okay, so you're gonna have a big portion of the house taken up with a tank and
No,
a pump.
It's not that big, I don't think.
An
They're
additional,
pretty big.
additional portion of the house.
They're
It's
pretty
like a
big.
500-gallon tank.
You'll
right?
notice,
I
you'll
don't
notice,
believe that's-
you'll
it's that
notice the
large.
size.
It's like a big oil tank, you're saying?
Well, yeah, and then you have to have a pump and the controls, the footprint
Hi.
is significant.
Steve, I'm so glad you're here. Would you like to tackle this one for me, please? I would love that, Stephen.
Oh, okay.
Please identify yourself.
Members of the board, my name is Stephen Bork from Patco Construction. We've been working with Larissa and their organization on this particular development. At the time of the design of the home, we were uncertain of house location as that was in development. We fully understood that we may need slab homes because it being a quarry, pure ledge
Yeah.
all over the place. And trying to blast 7 feet of ledge is just not feasible. The sprinkler system was a question of whether it was required or not. If we were to do a sprinkler system, we'd be employing the Worsboro system, which is a variable speed pump, no holding tank, that's approved throughout the state of Maine. It's been done for years and years and years and years.
Do you get the volume of water?
You
Because
do.
I had this problem on Peaks Island. I didn't have the volume of water from the public utility, so I had to have 2 big 250-gallon tanks in my non-existent basement with pumps.
So what ends up happening is you do need to drill the well deeper. You need a minimum requirement of water, 19 gallons a minute for, I believe it's 10 minutes, something
But you don't
to
know that
effect.
until you actually drill the wells, right?
Correct, until you drill the wells, you don't know. So, sprinkler systems do add a significant cost to the homes because you do have to drill a deeper well. The deeper you go, the more storage capacity you have within your casing in your well, which comes into the calculations as well. In the 15 years of us installing Worsbros, we've never had to do a storage tank inside a home. Maine is fortunate that we do have water here, and we've never had to do a storage tank. Could that be a possibility? Yes, it could. And if we were to do a slab design, the house design accommodates everything above ground. We're not underground. It would not be freezing tanks. We are familiar with the tank size and systems, and the house design would accommodate that.
So-
Obviously, any issues that we would have with house design, we're going to be called to fix the problem, so we're very conscientious about that.
So if you're drilling into ledge, okay, I guess you're gonna do a flow test to make sure that the aquifer, you're drilling into ledge, it sounds like you're gonna have a constraint on inflow performance, right?
No, I mean, all wells are drilled through ledge, that's where the water is coming from. The beauty is I won't have a lot of cost for casing because the ledge is literally
Yeah.
2 feet below ground.
Uh-huh.
How deep we need to go is uncertain until we drill.
Okay.
It just is.
But then you do a flow test to
The-
confirm that you
This
have
is
10 minutes
This
at
is
19?
from the state. An inspector needs to certify that the system meets the requirements of the state. Yeah, a flow test is done.
Okay,
And it's not done by PACO, it's done by a third party.
okay, all right, thank you.
And I'm gonna have 6 wells on this site.
Mhm.
Wow.
If we need to do a sprinkler system, we would need 6 wells.
No, we
Yeah.
have to have 6 wells because each unit needs a well of its own.
Yes, if you're gonna, yeah, that would be the preferred method, is to have 6 wells, because the well that feeds the sprinkler is also tied into the domestic water
Yeah,
system.
right.
That's the beauty of the Worsbro system. You
Yeah.
don't need a separate well.
Right, but I've
But
got
you get
6
6
wells
units.
on this 5 acres or whatever it is,
Yep.
3 and a.
So, I guess it's gonna be an electric submersible pump in your well.
Correct.
and-
Variable speed. Yep.
And, what size is that, like 2 horsepower?
Depends on the depth of the well. So that's all calculated based on the depth of the well and your flow. That's why it's an upgraded variable speed pump.
Okay.
Which is done in regular homes as well, because there are benefits. It's required for the sprinkler system, but it maintains constant pressure. That's why it's an upgraded system.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
So can you said twice now, you've said if a sprinkler system is needed.
Mhm.
I'm confused. I thought there was a decision made that we were going with something called a 13B fire suppression system. Does that mean
Well,
one's
when we-
required or not? You know,
So when we started in the process,
Yeah.
it was not a consideration or
It hadn't been
requirement.
decided.
An hour ago, I just found out.
Yeah.
They've decided to do the sprinkler.
13D
system,
is the sprinkler.
Yes.
Yeah, my question was really that simple.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that meant sprinklers. Yeah.
Is it
Answer why we have that confusion.
Thank you.
So it is, we were led to believe that because there is no hydrant opportunity on this site, that
Right.
really, we were going to have fire suppression of some form. And our choices were going to be either a fire pond or the sprinkler systems. And the sprinkler system seemed like the more appropriate choice than the fire pond, which is why that is the direction we are going to be going.
That's good.
We will not be able to get approval without some form of fire protection.
I was just
Yep,
quibbling
and the fire
about
chief is
if.
fine with that arrangement.
And the fire, Galen's saying, yeah, fire chief is on
And
board.
we'll get that in writing from him.
I have letter from fire chief approving fire systems and turnaround on my list.
I already saw that.
So because you're gonna
And the
use
width of the
electrical
road.
submersible pumps, you're gonna have standby generator?
I'm going to pass that to Mr. Burke. It would not be our intention to supply generators, is not my understanding.
It's never been a requirement. It's not part of the code unless it's specifically written in Kennebunkport's ordinance. No intention.
Again, it's a cost that if homeowners wish to invest in a generator, that is certainly something that they are allowed to do. But again, because every future sales price is based on that first sales price, it is our intention to manage that first sales price as much as we possibly can.
The fire chief needs to also approve the width of the road.
Okay.
Since we're still on wells, I appreciate having the well locations on the updated plans, Larissa. Just my question is, I noticed some of them look like they're in where the trees are that are not being cut, and I didn't know if the intention still is to use those locations, and should those not be cleared? That's more of a question for Walsh.
Galen, would you be open to clarifying that question either through an email later that I could directly send to Walsh?
Yep, I
That would
can
be
do
great.
that.
Thank you.
And I'll follow up with notes for today what we're going through, but meets and bounds, it looks like they're missing from the road right of way. It was on the original plans, but then with the revisions, I just noticed that there's no meets and bounds for the road right of way that's there. And again, it's something, just small technicalities. The vernal pool is missing to the north. I know you're going to talk to Jim about that. But that's more on the plan set. I think that's the one that's closest to the road, Beechwood. And then again, I'd like to also express the planning staff is supportive of the housing trust in doing a fingerprint type design where they're limiting how many tree cuttings are occurring. And, we would be supportive of that waiver request from doing the survey. We thought that was a reasonable proposal. But certainly that's the prerogative of the planning board if you so choose to go out and do a site walk just to verify the locations of any large specimen trees that you'd like replanted. But what planning staff, when we reviewed this plan, we didn't see it necessary because they're doing a fingerprint design. They're not really having a large lawn area to require them to do a landscaping as well. But that's certainly the prerogative of the planning board if you so choose to require them to do more landscaping. And the only other two comments I have, financing, I did not see documentation from Bangor Savings. Is that something that was, maybe I missed it? I don't know.
Galen, it's possible that I neglected to send it. I signed a whole bunch of paperwork with them, so I know that I've got money waiting for me in the bank. What exactly do you want from Bangor?
It's just a letter of stating that, you basically have enough funds to do the project.
So did I submit one for Genesis and you're just missing the one for Bangor, or are you missing them from both?
I think I'm missing both of them. I don't think we knew about Genesis. I knew you had something from Bangor that you were in discussion with them, but I think you were still working on the paperwork to get that all resolved.
Okay.
And I appreciate the update to the driveway for building 1. That driveway was originally 10 feet and you did make it 12, so we appreciate having that. There's still a comment outstanding regarding the radius for that driveway. So if you see the when you enter in the property from Beechwood and you make that first right, that radius right there looks really tight for emergency vehicle access if they had to go up there and fight a fire. That was just an outstanding comment. I don't know if Walsh has commented on that
You're
from
going
our
up-
original memo, but
up to
that was something,
building
it
1,
just looks
Galen?
really tight.
Maybe that's something the fire chief could weigh in on too. Have him
He
look
did
at-
weigh on it with planning staff at our review of the initial memo.
Okay.
Yep.
This is
And-
the turn onto building 1 that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Up that long driveway that's now 12 foot, you're saying that's still a pretty sharp turn.
Yeah.
And
Right.
again,
If you look at that
you're gonna
radius, it
talk to the
looks
fire
quite
chief anyway.
sharp.
Well, and there's some guidance on this in the land use ordinance.
Yep.
Just, they got some typical details. Just take a look at that, copy paste.
I will pass that to Walsh. That is
There are
outside of my.
pages of guidelines in there on that.
Yeah. And we'll follow up, Larissa. The waiver request for that Mr. Francis brought up with 415 7.2D27. You all submitted erosions control plan. And that was, I think, sheet C2, 2.3, I think, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if that's really a waiver that's needed, since you did submit erosion sediment plan. But we can go over that in a follow-up.
I was going to weigh in on landscaping, since we can require it, but since you're not putting in lawns, the only concern I have is you've got trees growing up there, is giving some separate privacy between the buildings, basically, as well as along Beechwood. And I think the trees growing up there would help with that.
We think so too, and we've tried to be thoughtful about the placement of the buildings so that they are not in direct sight lines with one another, and that the driveways are not cutting in front of somebody else's home. I mean, we really have tried to think about, if we were going to be a homeowner there, what would we want to have as people that live in those homes? So we do think that by leaving the majority of the trees that are on that property standing, that privacy is really respected. And we would like to not be doing extensive landscaping, because we'd like to leave this as a natural space.
Larissa, when by keeping this one lot, you're gonna have the open space, you're gonna have all of the space, I guess, managed by the HOA in common, is that?
I believe that that is in the intention. I think that what I'm understanding from our attorney, and Mr. Burke, please weigh in if you know more about condomizing than I do, and have some, if I'm misspeaking. But we will, when we are at a place where we have some confidence that we're going to, move forward with building this neighborhood, we will sit down, we'll identify common areas, limited common areas, and that will include things like what part of the land surrounding each home is not considered common, right? That's the homeowner feels like that's their space to put a swing set, or it's their space to put a tree house or whatever.
Well, or their space to take care of a downed tree.
Sure. And exactly.
Right.
Practical financial considerations as well.
As opposed to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we will delineate what are the shared spaces that are common property. And that will, I think, be really the majority of that lot. The intention here is that, again, because it is being left mostly untouched, that it would be mostly common. But really wanting to make sure that homeowners do have some sense of private space that is theirs, and responsibility as well.
I was gonna say, but still that responsibility
Yes.
for taking care of the area that isn't theirs specifically.
Right.
When a tree comes down and blocks the road.
Sure.
Yeah.
The road, of course, being a common shared element.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We have some decisions to make. Sidewalk? I recommend a sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you do need some flagging out there you want to take a look at.
Do you think we need the site walk for the preliminary? I mean, it is the middle of winter too.
Well, it's a good time to go. It's frozen. Ground is frozen.
There's
Well,
no snow.
For
So
doing the
am I.
I'm just thinking of the expense of asking them to go out and do this additional marking.
My
just
feeling
for
about
us.
the preliminary, going back to Nina's reading of the definition of a preliminary, is, you've been before the board before with a sketch plan, and we had input, and I've seen preliminary plans where, man, they're, what about Goose Rocks Road? Wow. And they were very clever, but it had to come back and forth several times.
Sure.
There's nothing in this plan, to me anyway, that is sticking out like I'm really worried about it or concerned. I'm comfortable with preliminary checking the other boxes we were talking about. I don't need a sidewalk.
I agree with you. That's my
And
feeling
we've
as
been
well.
invited to come pull
I-
over on the side of the road.
I would like you to, tap your volunteer community to do your own walk and say, come back and say, I'm not gonna touch any trees over 21 inches, and there's
Sure.
only 7 of them, and here's where they are.
Yeah.
I will find as many people as are willing to bring a tape measure and a good pair of boots, and off we'll go.
Yeah, there you go. They gotta be at least 4 foot tall too, I think.
Yes, I think
Okay.
yes. No one under the age of 10 need apply.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we don't need a sidewalk then.
And
I think board members, if they want
That's-
to,
that's-
could just go out and take a quick.
Absolutely, and if you'd like me to join you, I'm happy to do so. I have,
It's only 4 acres, 4.5 acres, so
Exactly.
thank you
Yep.
very much.
And it's only a very small portion of it that we'll be looking.
But it is hilly.
See the back corner.
It's hilly, but it's rolling hills. There's nothing that's going to take your breath away as you're walking from one point to another. But if you are interested in coming out, please, and you would like a guide, I'm happy to do that. If you do go on your own, please, please, please be aware that there is an open hole in the middle of the property, and proceed with caution when you see the open hole.
Will we need crampons if it's icy?
I don't think so, unless you
Okay.
decide to go down in the hole, which I don't recommend.
we won't do
But I have not found it to need any sort of supportive gear to walk the property.
Okay.
And of course, make sure that no more than 2 at a time go walk the property, right?
No, we can't.
Right.
This is silence if there's 3 or more.
More than two, it's a meeting.
Meeting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Good reminder.
okay. All right, then.
Mr. Feister, did you have a question?
Is then, do we?
I had one question. Is that open hole because the remediation was never done after the quarrying operations to bring it to its original contours?
I have not yet seen a site that's been remediated properly. Is anyone else? But there's no way to enforce that I've ever experienced between gravel pits or granite pits or anything else. So this was a piece of property that was taken through tax acquisition by the town of Kennebunkport and then very generously donated to us. So
There are some quarry sites up there where people build houses that have done some outstanding landscaping over the years. They've really done some creative improvements.
I do think that if it were not a safety issue, the first time I saw the land, all I could think about was, growing up, we had quite a bit of ledge and some, probably not quarry activity, but some really fantastic spaces where my sisters and I could imagine all sorts of castles and forts and everything else, and thinking that if it was not actually a danger to children, what a delight that would be to play in. So we'll see what happens.
And I just caught the last part. What are you gonna do to remediate that, so a child
That is
doesn't
such a
drive
great
their
question.
bicycle into the deep abyss and disappear? I mean,
Oh, I don't think it's
attractive
not an
nuisance
abyss.
and all that, right?
That's going to be a question that we are going to address with people that know far more about this than I do. And I promise at final review, I will have a better answer for you than that. How's that?
Thank you.
But it's in place today, and there's nothing to stop a child from going there today.
Well, that is a true fact, but it's not a legally
You're not gonna
supportable
take,
theory.
you're not gonna take and sell a home next to it.
Sure, I mean, you're putting, yeah, I
But
think,
on the adjacent lots, there's,
yeah, I'm
know,
sure there's
likely kids.
insurance issues with it and liability that attaches to it now, right?
A
But,
trespasser could have an issue.
yeah,
Well,
just
you can
asking-
always fence it off and call it an attractive nuisance.
Please just be, if you wish to go on the site unguided, just be aware. There is a hole in the middle of the site, and I would not like to lose any of you to that hole.
Depends on how you think we're gonna vote.
No, I still would not like to lose any of you. That would be unpleasant.
There's more than one hole.
Can we ask a process question?
Please do, Mr. King. Explain.
I was just curious listening to this, and I should remember from my days on the planning board, old brain. Assuming that we can answer to a reasonable level of satisfaction all of the questions you brought up and provide the documentation by a meeting in the future, is it reasonable to expect, this is just kind of for our timing and planning, that we might be able to get an approval of the preliminary plan as well as a vote that it's complete at that meeting? I mean, if we could kind of do that all in one, is that feasible?
You could get a verbal approval, but we still have to do a findings of
Yes,
fact.
of course, right, and that's usually at the subsequent meeting. Right.
But we may decide to do a public hearing
Right,
as well. But the public hearing can be put off until the final
Final, yeah.
application. But you risk there, the public bringing in some questions or
Right,
concerns
right.
that cause you to revise the final plan and delay it,
right.
okay? So that's your risk.
I
if
can't
we-
imagine they would ask questions that you haven't tonight, but.
Well, if
pretty
there are
thorough.
abutters, they may have some
Oh,
concerns.
I know, yeah, okay.
Okay, but yes,
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do that and
it would
get
be
to that
very
point.
helpful to have, an
Yeah.
updated application with these questions answered and an updated plan. And that
Right.
would it would really clarify things a
Right,
lot, I think, for
absolutely,
everybody.
understood.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so hopefully we'll get there sooner rather than later, because it's,
We have updated plans. We've asked for an update of the text to go with it. Is there
Yeah.
an update to the stormwater plan that goes with the updated plan, or is it, doesn't make any difference?
No, so the responses to the ACORN questions were submitted by Walsh last week. And many of their responses say will be submitted with final application. So I think that Walsh's intention is to wait and kind of see, does this board feel that we are meeting requirements to get through preliminary before they apply any additional time or resources to?
Sure, no, that makes sense. But what we'll be looking for is Acorn saying, on the comments that actually pertain to the stormwater report, plan, yes, that's right, that would do it. Right.
Yes, and-
We don't need to see the plan updated today, but yes, you've addressed, you understand our comment, you know how to address it.
Yeah, we would like ACORN to say that as well.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why I think, again, it's important that we make sure we understand which of the comments Acorn's making really are in their wheelhouse.
Sure. If we are able to get the things that this board has requested this evening to you by next Wednesday, would we be able to be on the agenda for your meeting on the 22nd?
I don't see why not.
That's in keeping with past practice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that will be our intention, again, without any control over how long it takes for ACORN to respond to things. But with the things that are under our control, it will be our intention to get everything to you by next Wednesday. We really want to have this neighborhood built and the houses sold by August of this year. Okay, this is our intention. So we would like to keep moving forward.
Well, I would like to see an updated, very clear plan with all the wells on it and everything else in there, even if you had to take this one and mark it up.
Okay.
Okay? And I would be willing to accept that,
Sure,
you know, rather than have to go back to Walsh and get new plans and things
Absolutely.
like that.
Sure.
But remember, you run the risk of, if you're waiting for a stormwater report, you do have abutters who may be concerned about water, you know, stormwater and so forth, if we put off a public hearing. But I want to point out, if there's anybody out there in Eland listening, you know, that's in a butter or anything like that, that we take written comments, emails, letters, whatever, and the planning board reads them all. So if there are concerns, bring them up early if possible.
or if there's support, that
If
would,
there's support, yes.
that would be good to hear as well, one way or the other.
And I think that one of the things that we certainly shared with the abutters, that we welcomed their feedback and that we've shared with them the dates that we were going to be attending these meetings, and let them know that they were welcome to attend the meeting, certainly, and that there would be a public hearing at which point they could speak to any of their supports or concerns. We did have one abutter that is fairly new and to the process, and did share with them that while planning boards across the state of Maine absolutely want to hear from abutters their concerns, an abutter who simply is sad to see a neighborhood going in is not justification for denying the application. That providing the application meets the ordinance and the state requirements, the application is approved. So I just think that was we tried to say that very kindly and very nicely, but I think that it's important for people to understand that while absolutely we are looking to be good neighbors and looking to find ways to mitigate any impact that somebody feels that our neighborhood may have on their enjoyment of their property, we will be building within the limits of the ordinance language and the right to do so.
That's helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Well, then, I would say that we're going to continue the preliminary application.
Continue the initial,
Okay.
yeah.
Do we need a vote on that?
Yeah, should do,
Yeah.
I think. I move to continue the preliminary application.
I'll second that. Ed,
Yes.
I approve.
Approve.
approved.
Okay. Then,
Thank you. We'll see you hopefully on the 22nd. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There we go.
Larissa?
always somebody.
Larissa? Tom dropped a glove, I don't want to.
Welcome back.
How are you? I let myself one square. That's it. That's it.
Oh my God, I have to have at least one lunch.
It's almost 8 o'clock.
No, don't they say 9 o'clock, or is that the says 9 o'clock? No, these days say 9 o'clock.
Who's next? Is there anything next?
I think
No new business.
Yeah, the rabbit, yes, Rabbit Run.
I mean, it's up to the board.
Rabbit Run, yeah.
Yeah, I'm,
I love these like battling reports. You know, Acorn, and then then these guys Walsh is responding, and then Acorn's doing a sort of a snippy memo saying, well, what they say, this is engineer shit, lawyer stuff, man. This is,
Wait till they're in, like, I was hoping.
We're still on the air, folks.
Still on the air.
We've had confrontations at field, sidewalks, and we're always a hoot.
this is like reality TV, but better. And is this related to Aaron Walsh, the excavators down, or is it Welsh or Walsh? Welsh maybe is the excavators.
Came for the hors d'oeuvres.
I don't know.
All right.
Seem to be fairly well known.
Who?
Well,
Yeah, well, Welsh or Welsh. But you were keeping up a good pace. I'll tell you, you were definitely a serious runner, eh?
I have been, I am no longer.
Well, hey,
I'm a plodder now.
if you can get out there in this temperature, that is a good deal.
I love running in the cold. I'd rather run in the cold
Oh.
than the heat.
Yeah, it's, my wife is from Houston, that's where I met her, and I was there for 7 years. Got married, but her family is still in Texas, like in Austin and Houston.
yeah, I can do that.
And
Yep.
4 months, 5 months out of the year, it's 100.
And
every
humid.
day. And Houston's 90% humidity and 100, and so the heat index is like 1 million, but, and
Yes, I can do that.
when I first moved to Houston, I was a big runner. That was until like
Okay, yep, I can do that.
10 years ago I started. But I would kept pushing my running later at night, you know, because I went there in May and it was still. And then basically at midnight it's 85 degrees.
We know
and it's
him.
dark. So you know I learned how to run on a treadmill, which is very unfulfilling to me and terrible. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't beat the heat because if you get up at 6 in the morning and it's like pushing 90, and then at midnight it's 90. It goes to 105 at 5 o'clock. I mean, it's crazy. I hated that. And people limit at least I limited my outdoor time. You spend more outdoor time limitation in the heat than you do in the cold, because you can always put a sweater on or a
It's
hat
like
or.
the Arizonans playing golf
Right.
at, 5
Five-
a.m.
Yeah, because they're trying to beat the heat. And Atlanta was we were there for 20 years. That was a 4-season place, though, because of the
Okay.
altitude. It's at 1,000.
We ready to go again?
You know, nice weather. Not cold.
Okay, we didn't get a case manager on that last application.
Are you volunteering?
I am volunteering, so it's gonna be a big one. I'll take this one off. All right, our next application is 201 Rabbit Rub subdivision, Longview Partners.
Folks in the back of the room, please take it outside. We can't hear
Gents.
the
Guys.
broadcast.
My apologies.
Okay, Longview Partners is the agent for this subdivision application, and this is the initial review.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Johnson. I'm with JPS Professional Services. Longview Partners is experiencing severe health problems.
Oh, no.
And they're not able to be here, so I'm standing in tonight. I'll be happy to try to field as many of the questions as I can. We're basically looking to continue. We want to thank Nadia and Galen for a very comprehensive set of comments that we're going through now.
Okay, if you describe the property and the topography and the subdivision that you like to form?
Okay, the property is, a three-lot subdivision.
Nope,
Just take the mic.
Microphone,
Oh,
thanks.
Like you're doing
and it's
stand-up.
it's up on the board behind as well. A three-lot subdivision, total of 272,000 square feet. So approximately 50,000, 40 to 50,000 per lot.
And this is a preliminary plan,
A preliminary plan, yes.
okay?
There's also, existing conditions plan with the set, grading and drainage plan for the roadway and, erosion control details, and an erosion control plan. We've already received, permit by rule, stormwater permit by rule from the DEP.
Okay. One of the things your plan doesn't have is it doesn't give a whole lot of information about the surrounding area. And one of the things I noticed on the GIS maps is that you have 3 ponds, it looks like 3 bodies of water that are down to the southwest there, an adjacent property. And one of them, at least on the GIS map, seems to overlap onto the property.
Not that I'm aware of. We'll have to check that out with the GIS. That will be Longview Partners.
Okay,
I will say, just from a staff perspective, the GIS maps aren't always perfect.
yeah, we know that, but that is what we see. And even on aerial maps, it looks like at least 2 bodies of water there.
Okay, yep, I'm not suggesting not to look into it, just,
Can I piggyback on that, Nina, just to, one of the things I look for in the package usually is the map that shows, I think it's called the tax map, of where this lot is and then what the other adjacent lots are. And I don't see that map in the package. Maybe I missed it, but I couldn't find it. I think that's part of what, it's like, it's just hard to put this in the context.
Right.
Of the
When you
larger
look-
world.
When you look, for example, at the abutters report, there's, I don't know how many,
200.
there's, at 272 Mills, there's a lot of abutters. And I don't have anything that shows me what's at 272 Mills in the package.
I bet this is across from the campgrounds.
I think it's
By
the
Goose Rock-
resort at Goose
By
Rocks.
Goose Rocks Dairy.
Yes. We've looked at this property.
No, it's not a campground, is it?
No, the campground's across the street. Goose Rocks Dairy is on, and it's that, I bet it's that complex next, that's why you've got so many of these. I think that's
So
270.
so I'd like to have in the
Yeah.
package something
So that's-
that makes that pop.
This is meeting 2.
Okay, good, I thought so.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, that was good. I'm not
And-
as familiar with
No,
that as I need to be.
You know, this is something that Jim does, and I have trouble with all the time, is that he puts in a soils map, a web soil survey, but he doesn't outline the property on it, and it's very hard to see where things are. And there are several other maps in there too that, I don't know if I can find them right now, but there's an overview, but I don't know where the property is in that overview. I don't know how large it is, basically, and I don't know how to look at it and address it, you know. So something to look at, and from the point of view of a person who's trying to see where the lot is from those aerial views that he shows. I think one of them is the wildlife map as well. I don't know where the property is in that. I don't know whether it's some little squidgen down in the corner or it takes up most of the map.
Right.
And I need to be able to see that, to see, for example, this apparently is a wildlife area. And I know with other subdivisions that have gone in, you know, in this type of area, there have been concerns about wildlife and wildlife corridors. So I always like to take a look at that. But I'm going to turn it over to you and let you ask your questions.
I think I just have one
Okay.
question, and that's on this plan that you have up on the wall, on the easel there. The numbers seem to me to be inconsistent. If you look at what it says here for Lot 2, the square footage, right, 57,087.9 square feet.
Yes.
And then down at the bottom, it says that it's 53,314.9 square feet. Just giving you an example. You see the table down the bottom?
Yes.
That table's not consistent with the numbers that are up above.
Okay, we will review that.
The one in particular, if you look at carefully, is the open space one, which above in the map says 40,761.6, or 15.9%.
Right.
Greater than 15%. That was the magic number there. Let's go look at the open space down the bottom. It's a smaller number, 40,761.6, which I'll tell you is 14.9%.
Yes.
Can you get that
Yes.
squared?
Yes.
I know that you want to say that it's above 15%.
Right. 15% is actually 49,909%, or 909 square feet.
You say that.
When, in the density calculation, we pulled out 15%.
Required open
And
space.
what we'll do
4909.
is we'll adjust this lot line into Lot 2.
I just want the numbers to be consistent.
Understood,
Yeah, yeah.
understood.
But there's a number of them that are wrong. I just pointed out two.
Right,
You could revisit that. That would be dandy.
understood.
That's all I had, Nina. Yeah, believe it or not.
Larry?
So, I just had a little trouble reconciling your grid north with your locus map. The locus map makes me think the property is on the north side of State Route 9. But then which of these grid norths is north? Is it the arrow or is it the big shape? Which, could you?
Grid north is straight up in the locus map.
Okay, so what's the significance of this little arrow at the bottom of the, okay, look at your upper right-hand corner. Look at the upper right-hand corner.
Yes.
So what's the significance of the little arrow below the grid north symbol? The grid north symbol is not clear to me, okay? When I first looked at it, I thought this was on the south side of 9
Yeah.
instead of the north side of 9.
You're talking about this arrow?
Yeah, what is that?
It's just a stylistic.
Okay, maybe you could put north, you know?
Well, again, I think that,
It's
Okay.
not clear that was confusing to me. I had to.
Understood.
and again, with the, if we had the tax map in there that showed where this
Yeah.
was and what the abutting properties were, and that would put it in context.
Yeah, that'd help a lot, yeah.
So add grid north nomenclature to the north
Yeah,
arrow.
it'd be useful.
Okay.
The easement is just that tower that's back there?
Yes, it's built, the easement is designed around the existing road.
Right. And there are some, there were buildings that were out there, had they been removed or going to be removed?
They've been removed.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, that's all I had.
Okay, Mike?
There were a number of items in the planning board memo, and I guess I haven't, not sure that they've all been addressed. I mean, there seem to be a number of outstanding items.
I think he's addressing it. We just received it, so,
If you're going to talk, you need to come up to the mic.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was a question.
they were addressing you.
Yes, we just received this and we're in the process
Of going through.
of
Okay.
starting to go through it,
All right, 'cause it-
line item by line item.
Okay. Is that it for you?
Was there a thought of doing a stormwater review of this one also?
I think so. We've
There
got
was-
water bodies nearby.
They've asked for a waiver.
Yeah, there was no stormwater management plan submitted. They asked for a waiver for that requirement, so we didn't have anything to submit to Acorn.
Given where it is,
I would assume we need one.
I think we need one.
Oh, yeah. It didn't occur to me that we wouldn't have one.
Yeah, that's gonna be an important part.
So, yeah,
And you know, we need things like the building envelopes.
That's,
Areas that are gonna be cleared, tree survey, at least in the cleared areas.
that's addressed in this memo. We're in the process
Oh, okay.
Yes, okay.
of doing that. That'll be
So-
added to this plan.
So there's a lot of information that you still need to provide on this particular application. Peter, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the right-of-way, and did you say that the tower has been taken down? Or is that still active?
No, the tower is still active.
Okay, and is the tower in, the proximity of the tower to the homes, prospective homes, has that been tested, or, radio waves? I've lived some of this firsthand with my daughter looking to rent a home on a short-term basis near a cell tower, and actually some AM radio station towers, and they emit an awful lot of radio waves. I just don't, maybe that's not the purview of this committee to talk about that, but from the Google Maps overview, it looks like that tower is in pretty close proximity to the placement of these two homes.
That would be a buyer beware issue if they were concerned about that.
Where is it? Where's the tower?
The tower is
Just in.
up there. See where the,
No.
So this road is originally an access road that went up to the tower on this road.
It's not on this it's not on this property.
It's on this
Sure.
property, but they have an easement to get there.
I
They
see.
gotta do maintenance on the tower.
Tower looks to be quite tall.
Yeah.
There was already a kind of a roadway.
Well, do we know how close it is? I mean, what,
So I'm Jessica Jolin, owner of the property and also design builder. I just wanted to mention, so when we provide, you're absolutely right, we should provide a larger context, a tax map and a couple of other drawings. And you'll see that the tower is quite ways away. While I completely hear what you're saying about the radio waves, you just mentioned that, I think 270 or something, abutters to the right, and also Prospect Reserve is one house down to the left. So I know that was recently, we're actually designing a couple houses in there. So I know that we are one lot away from that development. which you guys approved, so I just wanted to put that into context, so, but I understand what you're saying. And I agree with you about the radio waves. Not a lot we can do, but on the context plan, we'll show you, it's quite a ways away, and most people have taken to this site, you can't even see it. There's about like 3 months a year that you can even see it, so.
Okay. Well, it would be helpful to have that and some measurements and a little more information in the maps.
Sure, and while we didn't want to, and I know Jim, who is spearheading this, is not present, we felt like we should still come to this meeting and say thank you for this incredibly in-depth thing. We've been working on it, obviously with 6 days, and I did ask the office, I said, would it be helpful to bust this out and get it to you ahead of this meeting? And your recommendation, which was great, was no, get it for the next deadline and get on the next meeting. So that's our plan. However, what I've noticed is, in addition to this, lovely 8-page thing, you guys also have a lot of other questions.
Several others, yeah.
So our goal was to come and to see what other questions that maybe weren't in the memo that were prepared, so that next time they could be limited. We could really, between the engineer and Jim Logan, have all the information that we possibly can to get preliminary approved.
Sounds sensible.
Yeah, it is important. The memo is nicely detailed. It's really very good. Things that are important are stormwater management plan, outlining the wildlife areas in that and how you intend to work around them. Building envelopes so that we can see, what's really going on in there. This also raises the question of a site walk out there.
And again, I'll say, do we need that for preliminary
You don't think
sidewalk?
so?
I don't know.
I would agree.
I don't know. I don't see enough detail.
The only one that I guess that I'm not sure the site walk would help with, but is Lot 3. And it's unusual and and I don't know the rules or the guidance that's given around, is that a conforming lot or not? I don't know if there is guidance that exists for that, but that
Right.
seemed to be an issue that was out there.
Galen, can you tune in on that?
He, I believe, has left the meeting.
Oh,
I'll say, so this is in your subdivision regulations, that you can't have a lot with a greater than 3-to-1 length to width ratio. This one is obviously a little bit funky. I think depending on where you measure the length and the width, you can get different ratios. So that's certainly up to planning board discretion where to take those measurements.
So what we propose, and we read that and we've been working on that, what we propose is at the next meeting or submission, right? My architecture firm plans to work on this very carefully to.
Okay, so you'll address it
To
for
show
the
you
next
how it'll
one.
work,
Okay.
and I hope that that's acceptable to you guys.
Okay.
So we think that, forgot how wide the widest is, but this is
157 feet.
wide, so there's a lot we can do with that, with so much length, and I think that the plan, is a little.
And that would
excuse
help
me,
with
not
the,
what-
with the building envelope
Yeah.
on there, you get a feel for.
Sure.
Even if it's notional.
relative.
This scale's a little hard to see, because we're only putting 3 lots, it's a big lot.
Yeah.
And we're, property, we're only putting 3 on there, so I think scale-wise, it looks smaller,
Yeah, and that
perhaps.
would, with the envelopes and that would probably help a lot.
Absolutely,
Okay,
so we'd
excellent.
like to make a proposal, for how we think that can certainly work before you guys rule on the lot shape.
And I would say as well, Galen and I did talk about this lot specifically. We agree that the spirit of that part of the ordinance is to prevent flagpole lots, which this is not. So, also maybe something to take under advisement.
I just wasn't sure what the requirement was, and if it's a ratio 3-to-1 or whatever, at least that gives us something to work from.
That is the requirement, the 3-to-1.
You are constrained by that easement, because the easement's there.
Exactly, there's, as our
can't-
engineer
can't move it
pointed
over
out
here.
this morning, that's where the road really kind of has to go for the
Yeah.
continuous open space. We
Yep.
don't want to have a little open space
Yep.
here, a little open space here.
Yep.
So I believe that we can make it work, and
Okay.
yeah.
So,
How, Go ahead.
building lots and septic, where the septic tank's gonna go in the
Yeah.
building lot.
We'll be adding that, so,
Yeah.
plan to add clearing,
help.
clearing limits, right, driveways, approximate large boxes, you know, I mean, not large, but I wanna give ourselves a little bit of flexibility.
Sure.
We'll have the, also, we'll have the septic and, the setbacks for wells.
Yeah, we need to know what the impervious amount is versus the rest of the property. How long is your road?
300 and something.
So it would be,
Yeah, I want to say the road's 3-something, if I remember right.
Around the cul-de-sac, it's 1,000 feet.
Around the so if you go up and do that,
So it's 700 plus,
it's bigger than I thought.
yeah, it's
then.
close to 800 feet from,
Long lots, big
from Mills Road to
All
the,
right.
to the back of the cul-de-sac.
well, we need to know whether it goes over 1,000. And you probably ought to have a letter from the fire chief weighing in saying that that's okay with him.
Okay.
I was concerned about the turnaround size, but if that's the scale, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got lots of room to turn his engine around.
And in our department head review, he did not have any issue with the, diameter of the turnaround.
Oh, good.
He was comfortable with
And
that.
they'll all be sprinklered as well, so.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So I started to get a feel that the consensus was no sidewalk. Are you guys feeling the cold or
True.
something?
Yeah, we're chilly.
Us non-Yankees are having an issue.
I don't see
okay.
any outstanding features on the property itself that I really want to inspect.
Okay.
And I don't see anything about the way that, it's not like, well, I don't know, we put the roadway's there.
Makes easy access currently.
It does, and then, you know, you'd have to make a decision on, well, could you, should you? This is the way it is, and, based on that scale, these lots are larger than I think. And, gonna, you know, trust when I see a little box on there for where a house would go here, that I'll get a better sense for that.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't see anything there that looks like, boy, this is a sensitive spot, and I gotta go take a look at it.
okay. Well, you can take Mike and make him a Mainer. He can go in shorts with his beard.
I have one question, if you don't mind. So your memo was all very self-explanatory. I would like to, we'll be doing all this work. This is a very large wooded lot. And I would like to ask for a waiver, similar to the last project, to do once we establish the buffer, to not, make you go out for an entire
Do
week
this.
to do the large trees that we are certainly are going to put in the covenant or deed restrictions in the no-cut buffer. So there's gonna be still plenty of trees that we will need
Right.
to mark, but that seems excessive if we're not touching, all those acres that, you know, if there's several acres that we're not touching.
And the roadway already exists, was the
Mostly
thing.
in that
Yeah,
location.
Yeah, you're gonna maybe widen it or whatever, but.
So obviously we'll mark all those.
You can ask for the waiver, but I'd like to see the clearing areas on the
Right,
property.
if what you're asking for, just to clarify, is that you want to identify the areas that are potentially going to be cleared and do a tree survey of those areas and no more.
Yeah.
Correct. We'd like to get as much work done in the next month as we possibly
Sure,
can.
sure.
So if you, so if we could do both of those in this month, establish the buffer area and then present those trees instead of getting that waiver
You can-
next time.
If you can do that, I'd still support the idea, but don't have to do a site walk. Otherwise, I would want to go out and see what that
Right,
looks like.
and so just to turn it around, just for the avoidance of doubt, I don't see any need for you to do a tree survey on the areas that you are certainly not going to be touching.
Yeah,
Right.
Okay,
that's fair.
well, we can give a waiver for the areas you're not going to touch.
Okay, great. We'll
Okay,
provide
and-
all the rest.
That would be good, okay. Anything else?
I have one question. What is a K factor? The Public Works Director had a comment that's captured in the Code Office's memo to the Planning Board. Provide the K factor for 25 mile an hour on the road crest.
That's an engineer question. I have no idea.
You don't know, yeah.
Made up.
What section are you in?
I'm on the memo,
Yes, what
and
number?
it's the very last sentence on the last page.
It's a K-pop factor.
K factor is the ratio of the curve of the
Oh.
vertical curve.
Crest.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't know it's gonna be on the test.
It's named after Charlie Kerwood, right, or,
Now that I could
yeah,
tell you.
no,
It's crest.
special K we call them. All right, thank you. It is a known engineering term, and there's obviously some minimum and maximum.
We have the K factors calculated. We have vertical curve reports.
Okay.
We have a need to know, clearly.
That can be included in the
Thank you.
package.
All right, good stuff.
Okay.
I always like to learn at least one thing every meeting.
Any other questions that we can have prepared?
I have one more staff question that I think I neglected to put in the memo. Have you spoken to the Nassau Tower people? Are they comfortable with the slight shift in the actual roadway? Because it does look like there will be, like the road will move slightly to fit into that right of way. So, just something that we noticed in the office.
We'll try to get, we'll get a letter, ideally before you guys pass the preliminary plan, most definitely before the final plan.
Perfect.
I remember you had already had confirmation on that. I thought.
No, that's
No,
not,
okay.
I don't believe so, no.
Joe, did you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay, all right. If there are no more questions, we do need a case manager here. I'm not volunteering for a second one.
I won't be here the 22nd.
We actually, I think that we're going to be at the following meeting, I think with the trees,
Yes, but we still need a case manager.
Oh, sure, I like you, so I'm just letting you know.
That's amazing, because nobody else in town.
I believe we'll
I
be
second her vote.
reappearing the 2 weeks
I'll
after
do
the
case-
22nd.
I'll do the case management, I'm around in March and April.
You will? Okay.
Thank you, Charlie.
February.
Okay.
What a man.
February.
No, so long as all those other ones that are postponed don't come up again.
Okay. I take it we're going to continue this
Yep.
application?
I would,
Yeah, okay, so I'll make a motion for continuation.
I second.
Okay, Ed,
yes, I agree.
I approve.
Approve.
Approved.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
So, one quick thing, I have the plans from Dan Poirier for you guys to sign, so if you wouldn't mind quickly,
This was the wall.
This is the
this,
seawall.
yes, the one you guys just approved last time.
Yeah.
Do you have a special
If-
pen that we're
if
to
we
use,
weren't-
or?
If we weren't
I
at
did
that
not,
meeting, we still.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be here.
Let's see, I think I have a pen.
Did you have some
Did you
rule
have to have a
about
special
good
pen? Does that be like a
pens, or-
black pen or a felt pen or?
There's always some concern.
Last week or
Yeah.
2 weeks ago?
Leaving,
I mean,
I want to,
Just one copy.
pretty sure I don't sign it.
Just one?
Yeah.
Texas.
Yep,
Where do they sign it?
right
I could
The
think
value
of
of
it.
it's
So the next
Someone will
meeting is
add the date.
February 27th.
No,
No,
January.
2 weeks.
27th.
yeah,
20.
2 weeks from now.
I thought it was once a month.
It's twice a month.
Is she watching it live?
First and third
Okay.
normally, but we,
Troublemaker.
January was a,
because the first was the
You can
first.
drag me in and verify.
yeah.
You guys want to walk over here and sign this? It might be easier.
Nina, I have a question. If I wasn't at the meeting that approved this, I'm assuming I'm not signing it.
What? Who?
Dead silence.
I think you can either choose to have what the alternate who is appointed to vote sign, or 4 members is certainly enough to.
Okay, well, if the alternate that was here, seeing I wasn't here, I don't know who that was.
That was me.
That was you, go get him.
Okay.
Mike Peter Pfister.
Mike West, how you
Nice to
doing?
meet
Any pen will do?
As long as it's black or blue.
All right.
Okay, I am not going to torture you and make you go through half an hour of the bylaws.
Wednesday.
We'll table those till the next meeting.
Special Mylar pen.
All right.
We haven't adjourned yet, Mike.
I'd rather go get another root canal than go through the bylaws again.
Okay, I'll take a motion now
Oh,
for
okay.
Just to
adjournment.
make sure we're.
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Any, oh, just.
To the next line.